Welcome back. Today, I bring you an industry professional that has worked with artists such as Prince and Toni Braxton and has produced video game music as well as been in all other facets of the music and production industry. My guest and I discussed a wide range of topics, and I was really enjoying the conversation because there was just so much to learn about the industry and ways to improve ourselves as musicians. And I know I'm going to get laughed at for this one, but this is going to be a long one. Giggle. But before we get into that, my name is Tim, and this is Discovering a Scene. Wow, look at you getting all fancy with your intros. Like and subscribe. I work hard to bring you the best industry professionals that are more qualified than that local pro guitarist that stayed in the local circuit all of his life with nothing to show for it. And that's enough about me. Let's go discover this great professional. How you doing, sir?
Good. Thank you for having me.
You have quite the impressive resume. I looked on your website and I was very, very impressed with your stuff, man.
Thanks.
Pretty much you've been on every facet of the music industry.
I'm kind of one of those deep dive kind of guys. It's like if I'm going to do something, I want to learn everything I can about it. So when I got into the industry, like, outside of, cover bands, it started on the business side of things, and I would just take every opportunity that was thrown at me. So everything from doing merchandise to guitar teching to stage direction, everything, right? So I just did it, and then eventually it moved into booking and management and touring guitarist and the whole thing. So production, everything, video, audio, lighting, I've done it all. So I just I like knowing where my show is at on all levels. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, 100%. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's good stuff. Yeah, I'm kind of one of those deep divers too. It's not that I want to have control of every situation. I just want to know something about it. That way, if something was to go wrong or something go right, I want to know everything about what's going on because you're in it. Why not know everything about it, right?
Well, I'm hoping that I've hired the right people for the job at hand. So, if I'm performing that night, the last thing I want to worry about is how the video's coming out or what the video wall looks like or, all that crap. And, but like you said, if something does go wrong or if I need to make changes, then I need to know what I'm doing. So I learned that early on, when I was working for Prince and Toni Braxton and, just how they ran things, what was expected, So, I learned that when you get to the national level of things, either you do your job and you do it extremely well or somebody else will.
That is true.
So, they don't mess around. They don't have time to give you a bunch of chances, right? Either you do your job and perform or you're gone. So I just adopted that mindset, and that's kind of what I've expected from myself and everybody else.
I was curious. You said you were working with Prince and Toni Braxton. What exactly were you doing for them?
Prince, I set up his first merchandising website section on his main page, his main website, and ran that for a while before moving in, to other things. With him, you're on call 24/7, so you can be called to do anything, and that's just where I started. But I, literally did just about everything you can think of for that guy. Toni Braxton, I was guitar tech on her tour. And that came through Mint Condition, and I don't know if anybody remembers them, but they had some #1 hits on the R&B side of things. But their sax player was married to Toni Braxton, and so I was teching for Mint Condition, and they brought me over to that side and did it for that tour, and they both toured together, so I was teching both shows.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that's what I did for them. But you're right there in the thick of the live show and seeing how their touring director hands everything and stage management, the whole deal. So that's where I started learning about production and how and what's expected of people who are doing that, and Most tours, they have their leads for whatever they're doing, and then they bring in local crew to do all the grunt work. Um, but that's when I started learning about all that stuff. And for the most part, with that tour especially, my guitar tech job was really easy. They, played Parker Fly guitars. It took no time to string them. There was almost nothing but a pedal board for me to worry about. So I had a lot of extra time to help other people and learn, the other techs and what they did and what production did and stuff like that. So it was a really cool experience and pays pretty well. You just got to be, willing to be on the road for a while.
Yeah, those
Uh,
Parker Flyers, those are some fun guitars to play.
They are,
I
and
love them.
they're super easy to maintain. So it wasn't like my guitars are a pain in the ass now, right? I spend
Mm.
a crap ton of time keeping mine in tune and whatever, but those, I'd string them every 2 or 3 shows and take me literally my setup time for those shows was about 10 or 15 minutes,
Oh, wow.
and that was it.
Now, what all does a guitar tech do?
Depending on the guitar player, but most of the time you're setting up Guitar World off the side of the stage. You've got your box full of whatever tech gear you're using. You're keeping the guitars maintained. You're switching pickups. You're fixing electronics, whatever. And then as the show goes, you're handing and taking off guitars, making sure the wirelesses are on and off because you have different wireless for every guitar most of the time.
Hmm.
So you don't want them to walk off and not have their wireless on, right? They got to be ready to go. So you got to make sure you do that kind of crap. You might have multiple instruments. You might have banjos, mandos, all kinds of crap that you got to know your tunings for. Um, Sometimes you're handling more than one player. Sometimes you're handling a guitarist and a bass player. Um, so I mean that's basically it. But most of that stuff, you're doing pre-show.
Hmm.
So you arrive early, you get there, you get everything set up, you're making any adjustments to guitars, doing setups, if they want to switch a pickup out or whatever the case is going to be. Um, some guys have really complicated rigs. I just happened on that tour, nobody had a complicated rig. It was a Mesa Boogie head and 4x12 cabinet and a pedal board. So I just made sure all the batteries were fresh, and whichever ones didn't take batteries, was plugged into the power supply, and the chain was good, and we were, super easy gig.
Very
Set it
cool.
to, yeah, just changed my strings before sound check and get them ready to go and stretch them out, and like literally 15 minutes.
That's great. That's
Yeah,
great. I love
right.
it.
And but and you're making 550 a show or whatever for very little work, and it's 15 minutes to set up. It was 10 minutes to tear it down. So it's so you don't stand around doing nothing after that. You're helping everybody else get their shit together if they want it. So
Right.
I've seen other techs, and I know a lot of other techs. They have a much more complicated, system. Things they got to set up. They might have tons of rack gear, stuff they got to maintain, all that. It's just that those tours I didn't have to deal with any of that. It was real easy.
Very good.
Easiest
Now,
money I ever made.
oh, I bet that sounds pretty killer. 100%. Did you have any mentors or anything like that, role models or anything like that in those lines of
No,
work? Just
no,
got in
I've
there and did it.
yeah, I mean, from that gig, I was in music school, and this was '96 up in Minneapolis, and I was teching for a guy named Todd Duane, who was a shrapnel recording artist at the time. He was on that Shred label back in the day that was really famous. It got Ingve
Okay.
famous and all that kind of stuff. So I was doing some teching for him at his shows, and that's how everybody heard about me. And it, they just happened to come. What was I doing? I think I was working at Guitar Center. And yeah, I was working at Guitar Center, and they had heard about me, so
Hmm.
they came to Guitar Center and asked me if I would go on tour. So,
Very cool.
I, to be honest with you, if it had been a major, like if it was Def Leppard, I would have said no because I wouldn't have been ready for that gig with all that gear. But um, for what it was a simple, easy gig and easy to learn. I didn't have any mentors. I didn't know anybody else who did it. Um, the only other person I knew really in that scene wasn't a tech at all. He was a guitar player for Janet Jackson.
Hmm.
Um, and I knew him, but I didn't really know anybody else that wasn't already playing for Prince. And I didn't really have a whole lot of contact with those guys anyway because I was more on the other side of the business. Um, so that's how that got started, and then I did that for that tour of America and Europe, and then after that I came back and I got a gig as a music director for a video game company.
I was going to ask you about that. Any kind of, what was it, a major video games that you were working on, or what?
It was $20 PC platform games. And the first, I mean, if anybody's played Cabela's Big Game Hunter, that was our game before Activision bought the company out.
Okay.
So I was there till the time that Activision Value bought Head Games Publishing. And that was me, writing music in a studio uh, for whatever game we were coming up with. And I did it with Matt Fink, who is known as Dr. Fink in Prince and the Revolution. He was the keyboard player in Prince and the Revolution. So if you watched any of those, videos with the guy in the scrubs, that's Matt Fink.
Oh, very cool.
Um, so we would go into his studio, spend about 3 days writing songs based on whatever they wanted. So for the Cabela's Big Game Hunter, we did like a Leonard Skinner album.
Hmm.
Another album we did a Prince style album. Another one we did. What else did we do? Oh, well, I mean, one time I licensed Todd Dwayne's album. We did a paintball game, and we licensed one of Todd's CDs, and that actually won Video Game Music of the Year.
Very cool.
So it wasn't always me doing it, but I headed it all up, and it was good money. I think we made about 10 grand for 3 days.
Not bad.
It was a lot cheaper to use me than it was to hire the studios out of LA. They were about 50 grand for the
Oh
CD.
yeah, 100%.
So we just did it all ourselves, and um, that was a blast. But that was nerve wracking because I was right out of music school. I didn't really have all that phrasing down that you would expect in a studio guy, right? So I'm going to the studio with Matt Fink, and he's a monster player, and everything he played was amazing. And then you get me on the guitar trying to get in there and solo after listening to him kill it. Yeah, it was nerve wracking. Being a studio guy is a lot different than being a live guy, let me tell you. You
Yeah, it
really have to
is.
know your shit as a player. So,
Yes, you do.
um, yeah, that was a rude awakening, but I made it through and, uh, did that until we got bought out. So, um, but I mean, it's like I said, it's just you get an opportunity, you run with it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people don't do that. They get either too afraid or, they don't think they're good enough at it or whatever. And I've always been of the mindset if you don't know how to do it, you better learn it quick. You just say yes and learn it
Yep.
and go out and do it. So that's how I did it. And it turned into, a full time career for me for a long time. So I'm not complaining,
No,
you know.
sounds like a very, very nice career there. But I, I've always believed in learn as much as you can. I mean, hell, when I was younger, you couldn't have, you know, force fed me anything to learn because I had my head up my rear. I just want to be a musician. Just want
Hmm.
to play music. I didn't want to worry about anything else. I didn't go to school. I didn't do any of that stuff. Then finally got married. Wife was like, "You're going to school. You need to be able to pay your bills." I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, "Okay, fine."
Right. Yep.
And she changed me around. But then after that, I found brains I didn't even know I had. So
Right.
then I actually start putting it all together and really become a sponge on everything.
Well, and musicians are, I mean, most musicians are just like that, and they don't realize that you get so much farther when you can afford to,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
So, everybody wants to be a full-time musician, but they don't want to put themselves in a place financially where they can be a full-time musician. They were just expecting to get a gig somehow that's going to pay them enough money to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And, in the music business, there's a million things that you can do and get paid for and make really good money and still be a musician. And then you're
Mm-hmm.
opening more and more doors because you're still working inside the business. You're
Right.
working in, you're working next to the people that make all the decisions. So it's easier to get those connections. So when you're ready to do something or they are ready to listen to you and what you do, you have those connections. You're not sitting there working at Starbucks or working down on Broadway for $70 a night,
Yeah.
trying to make connections that you're never going to make. So, I always tell people, it's like, man, you gotta figure out how you're going to do this, and killing yourself in the grind playing covers all the time for no money is not the way to do it, because nobody's going to discover you that way. That's a
No.
real rarity. I think I know one person ever that's done the Broadway thing and been discovered and got on tour. Now I know a lot of guys on tour that go down and do the Broadway thing when they're not on tour, just for fun, keep their chops up, make a little
Mm-hmm.
extra cash. But I've only known one person who ever got discovered on Broadway and got out on tour. That doesn't
Oh,
mean it
wow.
can't happen, but it's just so rare. And Broadway now is so different anyway, because Broadway today is all rock and metal and not country anymore, and you're not in a rock and metal town,
True. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
And what
So,
are the rock and metal towns for you?
it's still LA, New York,
Yeah.
Chicago to an extent. Chicago's kind of a unique thing where you've got a little bit of everything. There's a lot of R&B and rap there too. But yeah, New York and LA are still rock and metal towns. There's just not much of a scene here, and there never really, as long as I've been here, the 20 years I've been here, there's never been much of a scene for it. And there are people who have been discovered out of here, but well, like Kings of Leon,
Mm-hmm.
right? They got discovered out of Nashville, but I'd never heard of them until they were famous, and that was all
Me
going
either.
on while
I
I
don't
was
know
here.
where they came from.
Right. I don't think it was from playing here. I think somebody knew somebody and they got signed out of LA or New York.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of what happens a lot anyway, is if you did get discovered here, you're getting signed to a label somewhere else that's never seen you. They don't know what to do with you, and a lot of time you just get shelved.
Mm-hmm.
So, it does kind of help you to be in those towns if you actually want eyes on the prize. So, you know,
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
yeah.
I wish I would have actually fell into that line of work. That would have definitely made me go further than working where I worked. I was a cemetery employee. So
Nothing
I didn't
wrong with
have an
that.
education for anything. I was just burying dead asses. That's all I was doing.
Nothing wrong with that. But work is work, man.
Work is work.
When I was here doing working back when you were here, and I was doing the local band with thing, managing some of those local artists, all I ever heard was, I don't have the money. I don't have the
Hmm.
money. I don't have the money. It's like, you can't afford gas to get to Knoxville? Really? Right? How hard is that to come up with?
Not
Um,
too hard, I
right.
guess.
I mean,
Depends
it's,
on what your situation is.
well, but I mean, they had time to sit around and play poker on their computer all day long, or find money to buy weed, but they
Yeah, that's
couldn't.
always been the thing that's kind of irritated me. You got money for that mess, but you
Right.
don't got money to
To
feed your
make it to
child or
your
whatever.
gig. Right. So, that was the crap that used to just drive me crazy. And that's why I quit working with local artists, because they don't want it. They want everything handed to them.
Hmm.
And there's no drive. And I found that mainly in the rock and metal scene. I mean, it's kind of true of musicians in general, but um, Nashville for me has been the most eye-opening thing as far as the lack of drive. Everybody moves here because they say they want to be a musician, but then they get here and they don't do anything.
Hmm.
Um, the average person lasts about 6 months in Nashville before they move back out. Um, and now Nashville's so expensive,
You can't even like afford to pay attention there.
right? Yeah. So it's certainly not like it was 15 years ago. And but it's just this thing, when I was growing up and we were doing music in our 20s, everybody was so hungry for it, and everybody was competing, and everybody was trying to outdo each other. And here it's just like nobody cares,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
mean, there for a brief period of time when you were on the local circuit for sure, we were pretty hungry, I believe. I think, from my point of view, of
Right.
course, my point of view was very narrow at the time, but you're right, 100% that it just didn't, things just fell apart, very
Well, and,
quickly.
and the other problem is not everybody's on the same page within a band.
Yeah,
So if it's a band and everybody's supposed to be an equal member or whatever, there's always one or two people running the ship, and everybody else is fucking off and making everything more difficult.
true.
So, that just slows down the process and any hope of anything really happening, and you're inhibiting anything that you could possibly do. So, that was a big issue. And um, there's just something about, and I know people get mad at me when I say it, but musicians are lazy. They show up late, they show up unprepared, they just don't get it. They don't understand that it's a business. And if you want to be successful at it, you have to treat it like a business. Uh,
You're right. There's a lot of times that you try to talk to musicians about business, and their eyes glaze over. It's like
right.
you have to be smart at this, or you're going to get chewed up.
Right. And
You
if
know.
there's one person in your band that does all that, that's fine, but you still have to handle your business, which is to show up on time and be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, the bare minimum of being a musician in a band is know your material backwards and forwards, and be on time, and be reliable. Three things that you have to accomplish, and that's it. And
Mm-hmm.
if everybody did that, they'd be a hell of a lot more successful than they are now. But it's just such a hard thing to find. And
Yeah.
when you got 4 or 5 people, maybe 6 people in the band, the chances of having at least one complete screw up in the band is there.
Pretty easy.
Yeah. So I know there's a left brain and a right brain thing, but still, anything worth doing well is worth putting the time in for.
Oh yeah.
So
If you want it, it
yeah,
really depends. You can really weed out who wants it and who doesn't want it, because, just like you said, that being there on time, knowing your stuff. I had a bass player that I'm still really good friends with. You want to talk about a man that knew his stuff inside and out, showed up on time. He was truly one of the few people that I could say I can count on this man to be there.
right,
You know,
right.
and honestly, I can deal with people who are not as talented, but are always showing up on time, because at least they want it, they want to be
Right.
there. You know,
They
but if
they
that
love the
person doesn't
process.
show
Yeah,
up,
yeah. You
what's the
love the
point?
process. I mean, that's the other thing I think people need to learn is that you have to love the process of making shit happen. You have to
Mm-hmm.
embrace that grind, so to speak, and realize how lucky you are to even be in the grind, right? How many people wish they had the talent to play an instrument and get up on stage and do all that kind of stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking when I talk, I'm always assuming that people want to be successful. They want to make it. I'm not talking about your average people that are just playing music for fun in a bar band, and that's a whole different world. To me, that's not the music business. That's just hobby stuff.
That's his hobby stuff for sure.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I
No.
mean, people got responsibilities, they've got jobs, they've got all that, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not where my thinking lies when people ask me about the music business. So I'm used to being around the best of the best, the cream of the crop, and just seeing how they did it and what they expected out of people. Um, any of those people that when I was doing the business end, coming up through the 90s and whatever, any of those people to this day would have played me under a table, right? There's never a lack of talent. These people were monster musicians. It was just they also had the drive to be the best at what they did and to make it happen and keep their gig.
Yeah.
They were serious musicians. They understood what it took to be successful and to get on the road and be on the national tour and do that stuff. And most of the time you're dealing with musicians, they don't understand any of that. They don't understand it's
Mm-hmm.
a whole different world than hanging out, with your buddies and going to your friends' shows and the local music circle jerk.
Mm-hmm.
So um, yeah, it's just a different thing. Like, being a musician and making a living at it, it's not any different than a 9 to 5 job and how serious you take it and the responsibilities that you have. You got to
Yeah.
be on time. You got to know your shit. You got to deliver,
Nothing
or
wrong
you
with
lose
that.
your gig, right? And so,
What a
it's
concept,
not.
right?
Yeah, yeah, right. And and if you're the person who's making it all happen, then you've got to run the boat, right? You got to run the ship. So you've got that on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
So there isn't a whole lot of time to mess around and go see your friends play or go get drunk or stoned or anything else. You're the one
Yeah.
doing the marketing, you're the one doing the planning, you're the one sending out all the booking emails, you're the one doing everything.
Yeah.
So, you don't get a whole lot of free time. And that's just part of the sacrifice.
Yeah.
Again, you have to love the process.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've been in several different bands, and there's been several different, band dynamics that I've dealt with. You had one guy that wanted to take control over the whole thing, and that's usually not always the best. Like, they want to do all the booking no matter what. And
Right.
they want to have their fingerprint on everything. And I've dealt with that personality before, and it's very hard to work with them. Now, if they're good riders and they're open in the practice room, that's no problem.
Hmm.
But when they're not open to the practice room and like it's all their stuff or nothing, that's a problem that I have as well.
Right. Well, then the band should be named after them, and they should be paying for everything, and all that kind of crap, right? So
Yeah, I agree.
it's if you think you're running the ship, then all the responsibility should be on you, except for whatever individual things that we bring to the band, such as knowing your parts and being on time.
Right.
Um, and that happens a lot. There's a lot of time, especially if they started as a band. If they ever do get signed, then whoever becomes a star in the band, it ends up being more their band, and the record labels and lawyers would often push that anyway, and other people
Hmm.
would kind of be pushed out or get a smaller percentage or whatever. Because if they ever left, it wasn't that big of a deal because they weren't writing the songs, they weren't doing any of that, they were just showing up and not really contributing more than that. Um, so you would see a lot of that anyway. Um, and statistically, there's always going to be only one or two people in your band that are that high functioning.
Yeah.
Um, so you can kind of understand it, but if you entered into it saying everything is going to be split, blah 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 blah, then it should probably be that way until somebody proves that they aren't delivering. With my band, I run everything, my bands I should say, but I give everybody the opportunity to have ownership and take control of certain things until they prove that they can't. Then I just take it
Right.
back. Um, but I want everybody to be involved. I want everybody to feel like they're contributing beyond just showing up and playing.
Hmm.
It's just that they've got to be able to um, open and close the deal, so to speak. If you're going to take the task on, you need to be able to finish it and get it done in a timely manner, and be responsible to reporting out where it's at. In the stage of everything. Don't just take it and then not talk about it ever. Let everybody
Hmm.
know where you're at with it. Um, and that sometimes is hard for people to do, right? And
Yeah.
so, and then they avoid talking about it because they feel like they're not getting it done, and they don't want to bring it up because then everybody's going to look at them with a negative light or say something to them.
Yeah.
So it
People are
just ends
afraid
up,
of
yeah,
having those tough conversations.
right. So I mean, it's like anything else. You got to manage expectations, and hopefully people can live up to them. And if they can't, then no big deal. You just know that they're not the ones to do that.
Hmm.
Um, but I like having people feel like they're contributing more than just showing up, right? It makes them more
Right.
excited to get things done and to promote and everything else. But man, I think the hardest thing to do is get a band member to promote
Yeah.
consistently.
And I've seen that even with with this project as well,
Yeah,
that I'm doing,
yeah,
and it's one of those things that like you want people to see you, make that happen.
right, right. I
You
mean,
know.
well, social media isn't my thing. It has to be your thing.
Right.
That's the world we live in, and that's how we promote. And
Hmm.
unless you're going to pay buku bucks for a PR firm that probably isn't going to do that much for you anyway, and have them put everything in newspapers and generate all these interviews and do social media is all you got, right?
Yeah.
So everybody has to be involved in that, and then just I don't want to be. Well, I see you posting all kinds of useless memes all day long, so I think that social media is your thing.
Yeah, it is your
Yeah,
thing. You just don't want to focus on what you want to do.
right. So
Yeah.
um, that's really the hardest thing that I have to deal with. It's just getting people. I've got some people who do it every day, and I got other people that do it once every few weeks.
Yeah.
And I like you've got to promote each show at least once a week
Hmm.
on your social media and all of your social media, not just your Facebook or whatever your primary application is. But you
I
got to do
think
it on
another
all of them.
thing, as far as the whole social media thing too, is a lot of people are afraid that they're going to oversaturate their feed with, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. But the way I see it, if they're going to be your friend, they
That's
need to
part of
go
it.
ahead and
That's part
accept
of it.
that that's
Well,
what it
they're
is.
they're afraid of that, but they're not afraid to put their stupid dogmatic bullshit political opinions on there 24/7 a day, or they're not
Yeah.
afraid of putting stupid memes on there 24/7. And the other thing you got to remember is, especially with things like Facebook, is somewhere between 6 and 8% of your audience ever see what you're posting anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you blasting people out with the shit that they're not seeing,
Yeah.
right? So, and the people who do see it are usually people that are constantly liking your content anyway. So they
Yeah.
are already supporting you and they want to support you. They want to help you. But people don't think of it like that. And they get a little nervous about over promotion. But
Yeah.
that's our job.
Right. Well, I think too. See, Facebook is almost like YouTube. That it has an algorithm.
Hmm.
There's people that have seen your stuff, or uh, they want to watch something very similar to what you're doing. Like if you're dealing with YouTube, and they'll actually watch you, but then trying to get to the rest of the billions of people out there, or just a few people that's on your friends list or whatever
Hmm.
it may be. Because I mean, right now, when I started this project, I just got a ton of musicians.
Right.
However, where are they at?
Right.
I got thousands or 1,000 plus people on my friends list, but only a few people that are subscribed to this channel. So
Hmm.
it's like,
Well,
I
yeah,
guess
right.
what you have to do is you got to really reach out beyond just like posting it in your
Well,
feed where
and
people
this
can actually
this
see
is
it.
the hard reality people need to realize is it's not your friends who are going to promote you. It's the people who don't know.
Mm-hmm.
My best promotion always comes from people who only know me through social media but have never met me in real life. Um, they're not competing with me for anything, right? Musicians think we're all competing when we're not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some people are, musicians, whether they realize it or not, a lot of times are dealing with um, jealousy,
Yeah.
right? And so they don't want to give you likes or whatever else because they don't want to see you become more successful than they are. Um, a lot of people will look at your stuff, but they won't click like on it. They won't share it. They won't do whatever. But the people who are out, the music consumers who are out there in your social media lands that don't really know you personally are going to be the ones that do the most promotion for you. And the other
Right.
thing is, I don't accept a crap ton of, like, I've got thousands of friend requests on my Facebook that I've never accepted because they're all just musicians. So
Mm-hmm.
I know that they're not going to share my shit already or like my shit. Most of them don't.
Yeah.
There's a few that will, but when I'm looking at who I'm going to accept, I go through their feeds and see, are they overly political? Are they causing a lot of drama? Are they, sharing other people's crap, right? Or is the only thing they ever post their stuff and they don't have any like personal content? Like it's just a way for them to post whatever they do, but they don't really use social media
Mm-hmm.
for friendships and things like that. They're not the ones to be accepting friend requests from. They're just taking up your space. So
True.
I check all that, and um, I want people to engage with me. Otherwise, there's no point in being in my feed,
Right. Well,
right?
I will tell you, being in your feed is hilarious.
I
Some of
don't
your
know.
memes, man, are out there.
And funny
I
things
love it.
is that people send that to me. I don't even go looking for it.
Yeah,
So
I mean, you're a conduit. It just
yeah, it
comes to
just
you, and you just have to send it
I'm
out.
not afraid to put it out there. But I mean, I also realize that with my audience, because I know my numbers. When I share that kind of stuff, my numbers went up over 1,000%.
Mm-hmm.
When I don't share that stuff, nobody's paying attention to my music content, and it never gets shared.
Just
So
said.
because they like the people who find that stuff funny relate to me, and so now they feel like there's a kinship there or something there that they like, and so they're more likely to watch my stuff or share it. If I
Mm-hmm.
don't do that, if it's all just business or whatever, then it's just cold and nobody cares.
Yeah.
So I've figured out over the years what my audience is and where I get the most help, on social media. So that's why I share that stuff.
Yeah.
It's not that it's not part of my personality or whatever, but it's just a helpful tool to get more exposure.
Yeah. One
Um,
thing that you do for uh, a lot of your people, and I know some people see it as, like badgering or something like that, but you actually offer lectures in how to do better on your
yeah,
page, and
people
it's
people
really
get
helpful.
offended even though I don't mention anybody by name, which is really odd to me. So it just tells me that they see themselves in that post.
Mm-hmm.
But people will send me questions or things to talk about in my DMs, and so I'll do an episode on it. And or sometimes every now and then it'll be something that's going on with my own stuff. But most of the time it's somebody bitching about somebody else. And so I'll do an episode on it. I don't mention names because I don't really know the whole story. I only know somebody's side, or what best practice might be. And it's all very high level. Like I don't get real deep into anything because I don't want to put too much out there or discourage people from thinking, oh, I can never afford to do this or I can't, I don't have time for this. I put the real basic stuff out there just to get people thinking about all the stuff that they're not doing that they could
Hmm.
be doing for free,
Yeah.
right?
Well, you don't know
And
this, and I wanted to thank you for it. Uh, you actually influenced this show.
well, that's
You were the
awesome.
one that kind of got me thinking. Maybe I should actually do something similar to kind of help people, because you mentioned something that was like, you know, just something as simple as showing that you're interested will actually push your stuff out a little bit further.
Right,
Like when you send a band invite or a show invite,
right,
if you don't click that interest on there, then nobody's really going to know it because it doesn't go any further than that.
right. But as soon as
And
you
I
click
started to
interested, it
think,
pops
and I
up
was
in your
like,
feed,
yeah,
right?
and I was like,
So,
I just wanted to help.
and everybody's always bitching about like, well, I don't have money for all that promotion stuff. Well, if all the musicians would click interested in all the band bites, then your band is getting out there for free all over the country, all over the world, based on
Right.
whoever clicks what, and that's the cheapest promotion you're ever going to find.
Hmm.
Um,
Same thing with the
and
like and subscribe button on YouTube.
right,
Just like you said, nobody really presses it, but they don't understand. One, small channels like what I have right now, we
hmm
rely on that because we have to get so many subs, we have to get
right,
so many views and stuff like that.
before you can
And
start
those things go a
monetizing,
long way.
right? And I mean, and eventually you get tired of asking or whatever, but that's why like every now and then, I'll share memes for weeks at a time and then I'll put it out there. Hey, if you don't mind, follow me here. And then all of a sudden I'll see a huge spike in likes and follows. But if I'm
Hmm.
constantly doing that, then people get tired of that. Um, but if they like you, and I'm one of those people that people either really like or they really hate because I'm blunt and honest. Don't
People have
come
a
to
problem
me
with
if you
that
want to know
honesty
that,
thing.
right. If you don't want to hear my honest opinion, don't come to me asking questions because I'll be
Right.
honest. And I'm not doing it to be mean. You got to hear what I actually think. I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass. And
Right.
if you're really good, I'm going to tell you. I had a meeting the day before yesterday with a guy for 4 hours who's a phenomenal elite level player. And I sat with him for 4 hours telling him how to make it happen for free, right? Because I believed in him. His talent is incredible. Um, I wasn't blowing smoke up his ass. I'm saying this is how you're going to do it. It's going to be a pain in the ass. You have to get through these little personal roadblocks that you have and realize the only thing stopping you is yourself. And
Yeah.
so we had all those, conversations for 4 hours and whatever. And I love doing that for people. But, if there was a bunch of, stuff that he didn't want to hear, he was going to hear it anyway
Hmm.
because you want to get together and have meetings and ask those questions. So and then none of it means like everything I say you have to. It's the Bible, right? No, you take
Right.
it's a grain of salt. You take what you need and throw away what you don't.
Right.
Um, and everybody's going to have a different take, and I can only go by what I achieved and what I
Sure.
did to achieve it and what I saw around me. It just
Hmm.
so happened that I was lucky enough to be around a crap ton of people who have been some of the biggest artists in the name, in the history of the world. So
Hmm.
and to this day, I still talk with some of these people, and I still go out and do a show now and then with somebody or whatever. And I'm always meeting new people in the business who have got 30, 40, 50 years. They all have amazing things to say. So
Right.
I'm pulling this information from established people. I'm not one of those people that gets on the internet and is trying to promote their new management company, but they've never managed anybody in their life,
Right.
right?
Well, speaking of the management company, you're president of the Lowry Agency.
Hmm.
What do you provide for people?
Me. I don't I don't
I
provide
mean, that's
anything for
valuable in
anybody.
itself. People don't
I
know
don't
this, but that's
manage
very
anybody.
valuable.
I don't manage anybody anymore but my own projects. I kept the Lowry agency around because it's a legitimacy thing for talent buyers and everything else. Um, I don't manage anybody else because I'm tired of the excuses and I'm tired of people saying, I can't do that or I don't want to do that or them expecting me to make them $1 million when they don't have $10,000 to put in their career, right?
Yeah.
Or then when we do make money, they're not wanting to pay me because they have all these bills they have to pay. Like somehow I'm not supposed to get paid for my time. And that was even with the national artists that I used to manage, that was an issue. So, you hear all the time in the music business about all the business people are going to screw you. No, artists do the same amount of screwing.
Yeah, it's a two-way screwing for sure.
It definitely is. They all think that they're the reason they're successful, and most of the time it's not,
No, it's all
because
that
they're
back-end work,
average
really.
level musicians with not a shitload of talent. Just somehow they connected with somebody.
Yeah,
Um, but they wouldn't have connected with anybody if it wasn't for the people behind them doing the work,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, I used to spend about 80 hours a week doing management for these national artists, and getting excuses about, well, I've got to make this truck payment, or I'm going through a divorce, or I'm going, dude, we all have car payments. We all have bad marriages. We all have, mm-mm, you got to pay just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And so I quit managing people because it was the same stories as if I was a musician dealing with a label or anything else. And then they're trying to take way too much more than they earned. Um, but I was with, I won't say who the band is, but it's a legacy band, and they flew me out to a casino to talk about managing them. And the lead singer's wife, who used to be well, at the time was one of my clients, and she recommended me, and they flew me out there. And the drummer, who had been around since the '60s professionally, with labels and massive hit songs and whatever, said, you're the new Irving Azoff. And if anybody knows who that is, he's the guy that fought for all the artists when he started his management company back in the '70s. And he's still the biggest man in entertainment today. So that was a real compliment, because I always fought for my artists. I never
That's
took
a rare
more
thing.
than, yeah. I mean, I never, I was not trying to rob anybody blind. I was just trying to get paid for what I did, and
I
and
mean, you
not
got
take big
bills, you got to pay them.
percentages. So, but it was always a matter of, I was always working, always grinding, always working, always grinding, and that's what you need to do if you're going to manage somebody. Um, I just didn't want to do it anymore for people who didn't appreciate it. So
Yeah.
I walked away. I left the business for 8 years and went and started a video company in a different industry and did that. And I was the first person. Well, I was the first independent person to come in and do professional video stuff for this marketing part of that industry. There was a company out there that was doing it too, but they were paying their guys like $15 an hour to do all this animation stuff, and those people were getting hosed.
Hmm.
But I did it on my own. I did that for a while, and eventually came back to the industry through a friend of mine who was a drummer for an '80s band, and I had been working with him in a studio trying to get that off the ground, and he didn't even know I played guitar. Had no idea
Oh,
for the first year and a half I was working with him, until somebody recognized me and says, "Hey, did you know Dave plays guitar?" And he's like, "I had no idea." So then he asked me to play guitar in this one-off show, so I had to go buy a new guitar and an amp because I didn't have anything. I had sold it all. So I got back into it, and then within no time, um, I was out gigging again. People found out and called me up and said, "Hey, let's do this, this, and this." And eventually, I just ended up taking it all over and running it myself because nobody was doing it. And that's
huh.
kind of the
Typical thing, right?
typical thing. You get in the band and nobody knows what they're doing and nobody's making it happen. And so either you walk away or you take it over and make it happen. And
So here's a problem that I had, and maybe you could shine light on it for other people that need to hear this. So people with their experience, they only have a threshold of knowledge. How do you increase that threshold if you're trying to get into it, but yet it seems like every time you try to get further in that, door slams in your face or whatnot. So how do people actually know, like, one, just say you're a band and everybody's on point and you got a good product and everybody is ready to do this big time,
mm-hmm.
but nobody in the band really has a clue what to do other than hoping that they get discovered at a show, which hardly ever happens, and just grinds you out. Or two, you got somebody that just knows how to do all the booking, but they don't know how to push it any further. What do
Well,
you
I mean,
suggest they do?
there's nothing that isn't on YouTube these days, number one, right? So you can
True.
gain a shit ton of knowledge off of YouTube, assuming that you're being critical of the things that you're watching. Because there's a lot of shysters out there on YouTube too
Oh, yeah.
that don't really know a damn thing. Um, So that's the first place to start. The other thing is everybody should have a working knowledge of business. And there's a bunch of free courses that you can take on business, stuff. Um, and then you start networking with people that you know or find out about that are doing something that you need to learn, and you take them to coffee, and um, and you're not taking them to coffee to grill them a million questions, because you should pay them for that. That's their
Right.
time, their knowledge. If that's what you want, you hire them for that amount of time. If not, just get to know them and say, hey, I'm not, I don't want you to hear my stuff or nothing like that. I just, you know, need a couple pieces of advice about what should I do next? Where do I go? And they'll help you. And more often than not, people who are successful want to help people all the time. It's just a time thing. And then, we always have to consider who we're talking to and how they're going to make us look,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if somebody says, "Hey, who do you know? Can you recommend me for that gig or whatever?" I can say, "Sure," and just hand them over. But then if they show up like most musicians, unprepared, not on time, blah blah blah, I look like the fool, and I'll never have that connection again.
True.
So I'm careful about that kind of stuff, but I can tell you what to do to some extent, or I can tell you where to look, or I can tell you whatever. And most of these other people can too. And as they get to know you, if you're not constantly leeching from them, but you're also helping them, you're offering whatever you can to help them, and they know it's a two-way street and you're not just using them for who they are, that's when the doors really start to open. Once they know that you're serious and you're dedicated and you learn quick and you're appreciative of all that kind of stuff, and you're not just glomming onto them, right? That you're actually a
Mm-hmm.
friend and all that kind of stuff. Then those doors really open. Sometimes that takes a while, and sometimes it doesn't. It just depends on the person.
Sure.
So that's the easiest way to get in those biggest circles. Um, the problem is everybody comes in those doors acting like they know what the fuck they're talking about, what they're doing, and we can tell within 2 minutes whether or not you know what you're talking about, what you're doing. The idea isn't to come in there and impress anybody. The idea is to walk in that door and learn.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up and listen.
Right.
Ask your
Right.
question and listen. Don't try to impress them. Don't try to say how good you are, or what you've done, or what you accomplished. Just listen. Let them talk. One of the greatest things you'll ever learn, because music is sales. All
Sure.
this is sales. So if you want to learn how to do this, go take a sales course. Go learn the Dale Carnegie method or something. But one of the best things you can do is when you get together with somebody, you ask a question and you don't say a word. You just let them answer. And then when that's done, you ask another question. Don't say a word. You just let them answer. By the time this whole thing is done, they think you're a great conversationalist, and all you've done is ask 10 questions, right? But they had a
Yeah.
great experience with you because you're not talking over them, you're not interrupting them, you're listening. They're able to, give you good advice and whatever, and you're not, you know, uh, popping out your tail feathers like you're some kind of peacock, right?
Right.
Because especially in Nashville, there's a million people here who've all done it better, done it at a higher level, right? You're not going to
Yep.
impress anybody.
No.
So if I'm sitting at a table and I've got Brent Mason sitting there and Albert Lee over here and whoever, I'm not mentioning a damn thing about playing guitar, because those people are a million times better than I'll ever be,
Right.
right? If they ask, I'll say, yeah, I can play that, uh, but I can't play that. I mean, I'm going to be honest.
Right.
Um,
Ego is a big killer for
a
people.
big killer, right? And no matter how much you've done, there's always somebody who's done more,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have to learn that kind of to read the room, I guess is a good way to put it. But when you get in a situation, you're constantly trying to put yourself around people who are better than you.
Yeah.
I don't mean better as a person, it's better at what they do, who have
Yeah.
achieved more. And so there's no reason for you to be peacocking because they already know, right?
You know what? And I'm going to reflect what you're saying there because I'd done that myself. I had low level jobs
Mm-hmm.
and it was just people doing, for lack of better terms, just trailer park trash, doing BS and like causing drama and spreading stuff. And then once I got away from that and actually started like investing in myself as far as my education, and I actually got better jobs. I'm a drafter,
Hmm.
so I design buildings with people, but it's not how I started off. But when I started working in the field, I started hanging around engineers, smarter people than me, and I listened to them. I learned so much.
Hmm.
I I'm not going to throw the big name out there that I worked for, but I worked for a big government contracting company,
Hmm.
and I went from a nobody to a somebody very quickly just because I got results done. I got to learn so much so quickly, and it was just amazing to get through that right there and learn as much as I did.
Right.
Now, what does it all mean today? It just means I learned a whole bunch of stuff, and I have that, work experience. However, you know, for music, it doesn't do anything, but it just trained me to actually learn how to think, learn how to listen, learn how to pay
Right.
attention.
And honestly, every job you ever have already teaches you this shit. So it's not like I'm saying anything that we haven't heard a million times.
Right.
And we have to realize that we're always the student,
Yeah.
right? We're always learning, and that should be our mindset. It isn't about being the best player. It isn't about being the best manager. It's about doing whatever you do to the best of your ability and being fine with that.
Hmm.
And I mean, we all want to have respect and that kind of stuff thrown our way, but that's really the least important part of it. It's, are you achieving the results that you need to achieve, that you set out for yourself? And most people don't even know what they want or what they need. When I
You
talk to
know,
musicians,
that's
I
true.
would, huh?
That's true.
Yeah, they don't have any idea. They don't know where they want to be. They don't have a vision for where they want to be. Um, and so I have to start from ground zero. About who are you and why are you doing this?
Hmm.
What in the world about music makes you tick? You know, and most of the time they don't really have a good answer, or they don't know how to articulate it maybe. Um, but I'll ask certain things, just like, okay, what's your favorite song? And they'll give me a song. Okay, why is that your favorite song? And they can't even answer that. And I'm like, well, fuck, if that's your favorite song and you don't know why it's your favorite song, how am I expected to buy into whatever you think your vision is,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you haven't figured out why you like what you like.
Hmm.
So we kind of start there, and more often than not, that lights a real fire under their ass.
Hmm.
They start looking at things a little bit differently,
Yeah.
right?
One of the things that I learned very quickly I was going for engineering in school,
Hmm.
and one of the things that I learned was a thing called the five whys. So basically, you ask a question:
Hmm.
why is this? Just like what you're saying,
Right.
and then ask why again, and then just keep getting down to the root of the problem or the
Right.
root of the thing. It may not be a why question; it could be a how. It could be a what.
Right.
But it's just get down to the root of the thing, and that figures out how to make you tick. And I had a teacher that was very good at this right here. They were just constantly. It's almost like you're getting grilled, and you can watch people. They were feeling uncomfortable because
Right.
they were vulnerable because they didn't
Right.
know the answer.
Right. And then you
And
feel
he was even
stupid.
telling people it's
Yeah.
okay if you don't know, just admit you don't know.
Right. And then we have a place to start from. And people ask me, well, how do you do songwriting? All right, well, let's start again. What's your favorite song? Right? What are the drums doing? No idea. What key are they in? No idea. What's the chord progression? No idea. Right? Well, start analyzing all that stuff, and that will tell you. You'll start to discover why these things are your favorites, and once you start learning all these things, then you have these basic building blocks to start writing your songs with.
Yeah.
And it's the quickest way I can tell people on how to write a song is figure out what your favorite stuff is and then learn why it is what it is. Um, and it's just it amazes me that I'm talking to musicians who haven't figured any of this out. And I'm not talking like you have to know all kinds of theory. That never hurts. But it's like you're not even sure what's going on with these songs that you love that you've heard 1,000 or more times in your life.
Yeah.
right? So let's take a step back and, okay, why is this particular feel or mood or whatever it is that why is that affecting you the way it is, and take a look at that, and then we start from those kind of things. And as you're writing lyrics, or if there's a melody that pops in your head, okay, well, what kind of mood do you want to imply over this? And then they can start thinking back, oh, well, that's how they did this, so maybe we pull from that a little bit. And you can put it out in whatever terms you want. You can say, oh, it's very dark, so we're going to do it in Aeolian, or whatever the case is going to be. But um, I just find it amazing that we as musicians who say that this is what we want to do the rest of our lives, we don't know why we want to do it. We don't know why things affect us the way they do. We don't know hardly anything. And I
Yeah.
think part of it is, we just love the attention,
That could be it.
right? We just love that attention. I mean, it's fun to get up on stage. There's no better, greater feeling in the world.
I agree.
I think in some ways, social media is kind of taken that more, like the likes have taken over live music, because a lot of people, all these internet guitar players are not live performers. They're internet guitar players,
Yes.
and they thrive on um, that attention that way. But the difference is on the internet, you can take 1,000 takes and post your best one. Live, proof is in the pudding. You
Yep.
get one take, and either you're going to do it or you're not.
That's true.
So,
It's kind of how I do my little spots on
right,
here. I repeat something maybe 10 or 12 times, and I'll take the best one or cut and paste. That's how I do it here. I mean,
right.
because I don't want to look dumb here. I want
And
to look
see,
like
I'm the
somebody that,
opposite. All of my videos are one or two takes.
yeah,
And it's the second take if I severely fuck up the first take. But if I don't, and I just have a little mistake in there, I just leave it in there. I just move on, right? I
yeah,
mean,
we're human.
you can tell I can play well enough to get through the song. Um, so, but I also know that for me, live is the thing, and if I can't do it in one or two takes, I'm not a good enough guitar player anyway,
That's true. I
right?
agree. Yeah.
So, um, that's kind of how I did it. And for me, it was an ear challenge thing. And during COVID, when we were all in lockdown, I just started doing 1 to 3 or 4 songs a day. I learned it in 20 minutes and make a video of it, at least as much of it as I could. Like, I'm not gonna learn a whole Dream Theater song in 20 minutes. That's ridiculous.
Maybe a
But
challenge.
pop music, you can, a lot of the songs I can learn in less than 4 or 5 minutes.
Sure.
And then it's just a matter of learning the solo real quick. And rock and roll is so repetitive that a lot of the solos are basically the same thing.
Yeah.
So it isn't all that hard. But that to me is the deal. It's like you have to get yourself to that point where you can learn something. And I get called all the time for, hey, can you fill in for this gig in 3 days? So you got to learn that whole set in 3 days and show up there and be able to pull it off. So to me, that's what being a musician is,
Yeah.
right? And and I use that term loosely because I don't really see myself as any kind of great musician. I just kind of know what I have to be able to do to get out there and do this for a living.
Right.
Um, but I mean,
Well,
I
and
think that,
also with you too, I've seen your performance photos and stuff like that. You get up there, you play your set, you do very well at that, and I can tell that just by watching some of your cover songs that you post on Facebook. But also, I watch your stage performance, like far as the photos that I've seen, and I see you're dressed for success. You're there, you're dressed
again,
for
I
that
mean,
kind of
I
thing.
learned that watching the pros do it, right?
Yeah,
They travel with wardrobe closets. They don't get on stage with their everyday clothes like a lot of
yeah,
metal bands did in the you know 2000s or whatever, or still do, I guess, in some cases. But um, I'm an entertainer.
yeah,
People are paying big money to come out and forget their problems for a while. So people, and this is the other thing musicians have to realize, is people remember more what they see than what they hear.
yeah.
So even if I make a few mistakes that night, they're not going to remember that so much unless they're a musician and they're being critical. If they're just coming to enjoy a show, they're going to remember more what they see. And so I'm there to put on
Hmm.
a show, right? It's an experience. And so that's how I treat it. I don't look at it like I need to play everything note for note perfect. I treat it like, if they don't remember this show and spread it to everybody else, I failed,
Right.
because I need them buying tickets the next time we come to town,
And I
right?
think that's why one of my bands actually got so popular is because our stage show is a little bit of a shock and all type thing.
Right.
Uh, I had larger people, like taller people,
Mm-hmm.
like more built people in the band and stuff
Was
like
that was
that.
that
And
was that Fable?
yeah, Fable.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the
and
fire extinguisher, like on
yeah, all that
stage.
stuff. And that was see, and that was right when I started working with the local bands here. Um, when you guys were doing that, and I think I saw you maybe 3 or 4 times with that project, and it was unique. Nobody else was doing anything like that.
Yeah,
At that time, it was all what was it, metalcore? Is that what it was called?
sure.
I can't remember. But
A lot
everybody
of
kind
stuff
of
like that.
yeah, a lot of people who sounded the same, and musicians we suffer from the disease of copying our favorite bands and then trying to
Hmm.
be them instead of being something new and unique.
Yeah, for
Instead
me,
of
when I'm writing, I don't like listening to other music. And it's not because I'm a snob. It's
mhm,
just I don't want to be influenced and
too
make a
much,
song
right?
that sounds like one of my favorite
Right,
songs, you know?
right. I mean, if you're not first, the best, or what was the word? First, the best, or the most unique, you're not going to get discovered,
True. I
right?
mean,
So that's the litmus test when you're an original artist, and you might catch a wave of like a genre. Like when Nirvana got popular, they signed a bunch of Seattle bands, right? Everybody was trying to
mhm,
grab Seattle bands because they knew for the next 2 or 3 years that's where they were going to make their money. But a lot of times you're getting bands that are already 3 or 4 or 5 years behind the curve, and they're out there coming out. They still want to be, kill switch engage,
yeah,
and it's too late. So you need to be first, you need to be the best, or you need to be the most unique. And if you're not that, you're probably not going to get discovered.
yeah. This whole episode that I'm doing here with you is basically a full clinic. people people would pay for this information, man.
Well, they don't. No, sometimes they do. But I mean, again, a lot of times the people that need this don't have that budget, so I don't blame them. But what we have to realize is that everything we need to know, for the most part these days, with the internet, is out there for free.
Yeah,
You just got to spend the time finding it and learning, and they just don't. Um, people are like, I'm not good at public speaking. Well, then go to Toastmasters and join and learn how to speak in public. It's free,
yeah,
right? And it's a non-judgmental environment for you to be able to get in front of people and talk and learn
yeah,
how to do it, right? Um, Join speech writing classes, take acting class, anything to help you with your relating to an audience, right? Not saying something stupid. Um, most bands, they don't work their show and their rehearsal. They just run through songs and then they're done. But then they get
true.
up on stage and everybody's staring at their feet. They don't know what to say. They don't have anything, no unique experience, nothing. And then the crowd walks out going, "Huh,"
Yeah,
right? But
yeah,
when you rehearse, you're supposed to run the show. That includes all the things you're going to say, all the choreography, or whatever it is that you put in your show needs to be run during those rehearsals.
I
That's
agree.
that's what a rehearsal is. But people think it's practice. It's not practice. It's a rehearsal.
Right.
So,
Practice is time for when you're writing a song. Rehearsals when you're trying to rehearse for a
right,
show.
you're getting the show down and ready to be presented. And people just don't do it. So,
No.
and part of that is they don't know. I mean, that stuff has been out there in magazines for decades, but I don't think people really grasp it. They don't get it that when you're at rehearsal space, you can have the round where everybody's staring at each other and do all that. That's fine, and that's even good for some things like certain videos or whatever. But when you're preparing for a show and you're going to be on a stage that's facing a crowd, you should all be set up like you are for that show.
Mm-hmm.
So you know how people are going to sound. You're going to have all the amps where they're normally kind of going to be. You're going to be able to learn how to move around each other and work out your choreography and face the crowd and all that kind of crap. And when you go out on tour as a national artist and you're doing your 2 weeks of rehearsals, that's what you're doing. You're running the show. The lights are running, the video wall's running. You're facing the crowd like you would normally be. All that stuff is going on. They're not just running songs. They're running a show.
It's also good too, like to set up a little different to kind of get a used like when you're in practice, everybody's used to hearing themselves,
Hmm.
and then when they get on stage, you're shocked because they don't hear themselves. Not everybody can afford in-ears, or the
Well, I mean,
monitor's
and
not
even
set up
if,
right or whatever.
there's on a show that goes by where we don't have our sound check and everything's perfect. You come back out 2 hours later, it's like I can't hear myself all of a sudden. Nothing changed. It's just, I think we get in our heads and we start blocking things out or whatever. But here's the most important piece of advice I can give anybody for live performances. You should be able to play your parts whether you can hear yourself or not,
Agreed.
because there's going to be times when something's going to fail, or you're going to be on the side of a stage and you forgot to put yourself in that monitor, or they don't
Hmm.
have a monitor. I can't tell you how many times I show up to a theater and they don't have enough monitors. Um, but if something fails, or whatever reason, if you can't play your parts without hearing yourself, you're going to fail, right? You should have enough confidence in your ability to play your songs that you don't need a monitor. It's always nice to have, but that's how I look at it, is a nice to have. Because there's a
Yeah.
lot of times we don't have monitors. Something goes wrong, something goes out, or you're stuck with a sound guy that doesn't know what they're doing, or whatever. The venue lied to you about what they have.
Yeah.
There's times you go to a venue and they say they had it. It's like, oh no, our other location needed that, so we sent it out there today, even though it was in the rider that you were supposed to have it. All that kind of crap. So you should be able to play your songs, your parts without hearing yourself, right? And if you
I
don't know how
agree.
to do that, when you're practicing at home, don't play through an amp,
Yeah. 100%.
right? The other thing I do when I practice is I blindfold myself and I'll practice, and then
Because
I'll,
it's going to be dark on that stage at times.
right? Well, yeah, I mean, and you want to be able to play your guitar without looking at it because you have to interact with the crowd.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to play without seeing your neck. And then the other thing is when I'm rehearsing at home, not learning parts, but rehearsing at home, then I'm standing up and I'm doing all the stage stuff I would normally do on stage, so that I can
Right.
play while I'm moving around, so that I can be, so I'm working out while I'm rehearsing, so I'm in stage shape. Because a lot of people, they get up on stage and they have energy for 5 songs and all of a sudden they're out of energy and now they're just standing there because they're
Yeah.
not in shape.
Well,
So I mean,
round is
all
a
that.
shape, man.
Round is a shape. Yeah, it is. Um,
That's a fat joke, ain't
but
it?
I mean, people don't. Those are things that people don't think about until they get to that upper level, and now all of a sudden you've got a 90-minute or a 2-hour show you have to do, and you have to get through the whole set and not get tired, right? Now, if you're doing certain artists will require you to stand back behind them and not make a lot of movement, just stand there kind of in the dark and not draw attention away.
Hmm.
That right? So maybe not so important, but for me, I'm always the show along with my singer,
Right.
right? And almost every band I've ever been in, because of the way I perform, they want that energy, and so I'm always up front, and I've got to provide that energy. So I have to stay in that kind of shape. And at my age, it gets harder, right? So I do have to work out and do that kind of stuff. Um, but those are the things that people don't really think about. And you're out there telling everybody, you're on social media all the time. Oh, we're the best. We're the greatest. We're the premier. We're the blah. You better act like it. You're putting it out there,
Right.
right? And one of the reasons I do the things that I do, like the videos, the talks, and all those things, is because it holds me accountable to backing up my own bullshit. Because
100%.
right, because now people are going to be expecting that, and if I don't do it, I'll go, he's full of shit. That
Hmm.
doesn't mean you won't have a bad show now and then or whatever, but people can tell when you're making an effort and when you're not making an effort.
Right.
You can only bullshit people for so long
Yeah.
before the truth comes out. So if you're going to be out there on the internet saying, we're the best band, or we're going to rock this night, I mean, you're using descriptive terms, well then you better back up that description
Yeah.
and think of it that way,
Yeah.
right?
And don't get me wrong, everybody has their off nights, but if every time you go out there is an off night, then that's probably
That's a bad
tradition and you
thing.
need to get
Right.
into figuring it
Right.
out.
Absolutely. And there's a touring player here in town, and he'll say things to me. Every now and then he'll make a comment on my videos, but he'll say things to me. He's like, "You practice until you can't make a mistake, and that's when
Yeah.
you're done."
I like that. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so ingrained in you. You played it so many times that you're not going to make a mistake, because consistency is key on the road, right?
Okay.
Especially if you're recording the videos, the audio, all that stuff. The last thing you want to have to do is go into a studio and make a bunch of overdubs and all that kind of crap. So that's just extra cost, extra time, everything else. And you don't want to make the band look bad. You don't want to piss off the singer. You don't want to throw them for a loop because you played the wrong chord and now all of a sudden they think they're in the wrong spot. Whatever the case is going to be. So you practice your parts until you can't make a mistake anymore. That's
Yeah.
the goal, right?
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that separates the average musician from the elite pro level musicians, right? To me, you're a pro level musician when you're good enough to be on a national tour,
I agree.
right? If you're playing clubs around town all the time, that doesn't make you a pro level musician.
No, it
That
is not.
you might be getting paid and making money for a living doing that, and by some definition, that's you're a professional musician. But if so and so isn't going to hire you, then you're not a professional musician,
Right.
because
And you
professional
can have a
musicians
pro
can do.
attitude and not be a professional musician.
Right, right. So, and for a lot of gigs, you don't have to be the most talented or the most technical, but you do have to be consistent as hell and capable at your instrument. So, even the simplest stuff in the world, can be the hardest thing because you get kind of bored playing it. And so you have to concentrate, you have to focus. And that in itself is a skill, especially when
Yeah.
you're up on a stage expected to put on a show,
Right.
right? So, all that kind of goes into it. And I don't say these things to kind of come down on anybody or act like some kind of badass. It's just that's what's expected of that level of musicianship.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
everybody's held to that everybody's held to that standard. Doesn't matter who you are.
And to be honest with you, you can tell a difference when some band has it and when a band is just, just up there to have fun.
Right.
And just me being a band in Nashville, I tried to get a band when I got down here in Florida. Uh, the first group I auditioned for, I was really taken back of how, the mindset was and, the different, skill sets, right?
Right. Right.
Not saying that these people were not talented in their own right, but for example, I was, we were playing, like, I was trying to learn the song. I was
Hmm.
like, can you play that song again? And then I noticed the drummer was over here rubbing his wrist. I was like, what's wrong? He goes, we just don't play this much. And I was like fifth
What?
time playing through. What's going on here?
Right. We should be able to get through a song that we've never done before within two or three times, and then kind of know. And then after that, um, you might work on a two measures thing here or whatever, just to make sure we got the timing down or the right, whatever, because some songs have odd measured stuff in it.
Sure.
But um, I have a couple hard and fast rules that I've learned over the last couple of years. Is nowadays everybody relies on iPads and charts. If you come to
Yeah.
rehearsal and you still need a chart, you didn't practice enough.
You didn't practice.
So I don't allow charts.
Yeah.
The other thing is I don't allow run throughs of the song where you have to listen to the song because you should have already known the song.
Hmm.
Everybody has a copy of the song. Everybody has a spreadsheet with the YouTube links in it. Everybody's got a folder with all the MP3s in it. All the stuff, all the versions that we're doing. And the only thing we should have to work on is how we're going to intro and how we're going to outro. Other
Sure.
than that, you should know your parts cold. So if you have to listen to the song because you're still not sure about a part, then you have to put $10 in the bucket. So, I started doing that because it became a thing where people showed up and they didn't know their stuff. And now we're spending a half hour on one song that should have been done in 10 minutes. And, we've got a 90 or 2 hour set that we got to get through that night. And it just got to be ridiculous. And these are all professional musicians, right?
Sure.
At least skill wise. Um, so I had to implement that kind of stuff because nowadays everybody's using charts on stage and you can't put on a show while reading the chart. And not only
No,
that, but when you have an iPad in front of you, that creates like an invisible wall between you and the audience,
I agree.
right?
And I'll be honest with you, like, these things right here,
Hmm.
cell phones. I've noticed a lot of people, they'd rather like walk through a hallway or,
Hmm.
just pay attention to their phone without looking around them, kind of being aware of their situation.
Right,
Because this right here is a fake
right,
world that they can hide their eyes in and they don't see anything.
right.
And I think that's such a bad way of
It's a
doing things. I'm
horrible
kind of
bad.
glad that I wasn't, born in the time of where these things right here took over the life.
Well, and when I talk to younger people these days, they're like, "Well, we got to get through 55 songs in a night, and we have requests." Like, dude, we've been doing that since the 60s. We didn't
Right?
have iPads and charts and all that crap back then. You knew your sets. There's no excuse.
Yeah.
That's just it's a crutch. And oh well, Metallica has teleprompters. Well, Metallica can afford that shit, and they can do whatever the hell they want. But my band, we're not doing that.
Right.
The other thing is A teleprompter is different from an iPad or a phone because it's not up here. It's not in front of your chest. It's not creating a wall. It's not in the photos. It's not in the video, really. What you see is something that looks like a monitor down at your feet. So it doesn't distract anything from the show,
True.
right? So it has a completely different aesthetic feel to it anyway. When you're 70 years old, you can do whatever the hell you want because, yeah, you might have some memory problems. Or if you only play a few times a year, maybe. But still, I
Right.
mean, I try to rehearse enough that I don't need any of that. When I get up on stage, I don't have a tab out there with all the notes on it for me to play through a solo.
Yeah.
I don't get any of that luxury, right?
Yeah, that would be kind of hard to get.
Right? I
My
mean,
eyes suck anyway, so.
but I mean, it's the people that need charts or music in front of them are orchestras and symphonies,
I could agree with that.
right? They can have that. That's their thing. That's how they do it. Those are 12-minute pieces sometimes, blah, 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 blah. And that's how they come up through their world is reading, right?
Hmm.
Professional musicians that are entertainers, we don't come up that way.
No.
We get up on the stage and we play. We don't have charts. We don't have notation. We don't have any of that. So, I'm really hard on that kind of crap. Um, and I'm not a big, I don't dislike tracks, but I don't like relying on tracks because there's too many times they go down.
Sure.
And so for today, there's a lot of people that, they got to have tracks to know where they are in the song. And I'm like, you should know that song whether the tracks are there or not. And we would have problems with that. People would show up, and if they didn't have the cues in their ears, it'd be like, well, I didn't hear the cue. So did you not rehearse the song at home? You shouldn't need the cues. The cues are just nice little reminders just in case.
Hmm.
Um, and we would just have too many issues in general. And so I outlawed tracks. Um, we have two tributes that I run right now, and we don't use tracks or anything. We have one song where there's an a cappella intro, and we will have a track in their ear for them to hear the count
Hmm.
and then the starting chord, and that's all it comes. Nobody can hear that. And then other than that, there's nothing. Everything is live. If we can't pull it off live, we don't need to play it.
I
So,
agree.
um, and to me, a lot of bands that they use a lot of tracks, it begins to sound stale. It doesn't sound live anymore. That energy just isn't there. It's very flat and uninspiring to me. So, just not a huge fan. I don't hate them. I understand their purpose. I just would rather not.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
you and me come from a different school of thought.
right.
You more so than me, but
And I have friends that argue with me all the time about it. I mean, it is what it is. It's just I, I have too much to worry about. I don't need tracks going down to be another one of them. What was that band a couple or maybe a year back or whatever that had to cancel their show because their computer wouldn't work and they couldn't run their
oh,
tracks?
I know who you're talking about. I can't think of it though.
Some metal band. But yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
now you can't play the concert because your laptop doesn't work. You're not
Yeah.
fucking musicians at that point. If you can't play your show without tracks, you're not musicians.
Yeah. That's a crutch for sure.
Yeah. So, I just don't want that kind of stuff happening to us. So, I'm when it comes to live stuff, I'm a big fan of taking out as much risk as possible,
Yeah.
right? And hiring people that are competent enough to pull it all off live.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Mistakes I don't
already
mind. Mistakes I don't mind because
true.
everybody's gonna make mistakes. It's just, train wrecking a song or whatever, that's what pisses me off. So,
Yeah.
um, there's, in a place like Nashville, you would think that that wouldn't happen because everybody would be so good and wanting to not suck in front of all these other musicians. But I see it a lot, a
Yeah.
lot. I went to
Yeah.
one show. It's probably 3, 4 years ago. I went to one show and I counted. It was either 13 or 14 train wrecks that night from one band.
Oh wow.
That's horrendous.
Yeah.
So I never saw them again, right? I mean, who wants to go see that? Um, but I mean, it is what it is, and I think I put it out there a little while ago that to me the definition of a supergroup isn't a bunch of people who are already famous. It's a bunch of people who all want it as bad as you do.
Right. Yeah. I agree.
Right?
Now, far as like with bands and such like that, what do you see being some of the top 5 mistakes in your opinion of things that would make them improve 100%?
Oh, number one, learning how to talk to an audience, how to engage an
Okay,
audience. Your front man's got to own that stage, front person, man or woman. Um, they've got to sell it. They
sure.
are the salesman of the show. Um, Having energy. Most bands I see have absolutely zero energy on stage. There's no show to watch. You can listen, but if I wanted to do that, I would stay home,
Mm-hmm.
right? I want to see a spectacle of some kind. I want to see people who are up there who are competent musicians who can play and move at the same time,
Right.
that are engaging the audience through visual. What else? Let's see. Uh, Train wrecks. Too many people who don't know their songs all the way through. Make too many
Okay.
mistakes. Um, what else? Uh, Appearance is everything. So everybody's got to look like they belong in the band, right? You can't have one dude that's wearing khakis and a polo shirt, and everybody else is wearing death metal garb, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every now and then I'll see a band like this where there's one guy that just really stands out, and um, you can have your own personality, but you should look like you're a band, right? And that being said, um, take all the distraction off of your stage, right? This is a huge thing, especially for if you want to get into corporate work, private parties, if you're videoing for live content. Every cord on your stage should be black. Every whatever, it's black. There's no
Mm-hmm.
white hand towels. Everything is black, right? It's hidden. There's no water bottles out in front of your feet. There's none of that crap. And every now and then you kind of see that, but and I'm not necessarily talking about the plastic ones, you get at the store, but I'm talking about, those gigantic cups that
Yeah.
people bring, the thermoses and whatever. All that stuff should be hidden behind your monitor or something where it can't be seen. Um, that just really detracts from the show. And then, again, iPads,
Yeah.
and none of that crap on stage.
I'll tell you
Especially
one real
like,
quick.
huh?
I'll tell you one real quick. The whole reason why I was laughing when you're talking about the whole having white, anything on your stage.
Hmm.
In my first band that I was playing live in Nashville, uh, I had these shorts that I mean they were for performance,
Right,
and I normally wear like black that has some kind of chain off of it or something like that.
right,
But this time I bought these; they were white. I mean, they were just like white as they could be. Like it was almost making me invisible because I'm so white.
right,
So it's like I brought those to the show. My drummer was like, "What are you wearing?" He
right,
just couldn't get past the white because he,
right.
he thought I needed to wear black all the time. I was like, "Dude, this
Well,
is cool."
and there's a downside to that too, right? Like you don't want to necessarily look like everybody else. And there's times I do wear white. My band wears black. They might have splashes of color, but with the Heartbreaker thing, our lead singer Missy, who's the Pat Benatar, she dresses up in a different color, and I'll dress up in a different color. And more often than not, we color coordinate.
Right.
But we're the two stars of the show, so we have to stand out. So sometimes I'll wear, white. Skinny jeans or something, but I always have a black tux coat over it or something. It's black ties in. We all look like we're part of the band. Um, with the Women of Rock, we go for a little bit more of a gothic look, but anybody can wear whatever they want as long as it fits within the structure of the band, right?
Sure.
And I have two rules on stage wear: no baseball hats. Those are the dumbest looking fucking things. And especially with like bro country, everybody wears them now, right? So
Yeah.
now it's just kind of cliche. And then we don't wear shorts on stage. Even if it's 100 degrees outside and we're doing an outdoor show, we don't wear shorts.
True. Yeah.
Um, there's certain genres where that's popular, and if you're doing that genre and that's part of that look, absolutely go for it. It's just for what we do, and for our stuff, especially the Pat stuff. I mean, that crowd tends to be my age, right?
Hmm.
Um, they're not going to be too hip on people wearing shorts on stage. They don't. It doesn't relate to them at all.
Right.
For the Women of Rock, we could probably get away with it because we cover everything from Pat Benatar and Heart all the way up through Evanescence and Hailstorm and newer stuff.
Sure.
We might be able to get, but we just don't. I think it looks better just to have everybody wearing cool rock and roll clothes and clothing and looking the part and um, you know,
And I don't know about you, but for me, I pick on drummers all the time on this
mhm,
show. The biggest thing that just weirds me out, I don't know why they do it, bare feet on stage, and usually it's the drummer doing it.
right.
I'm like, dude, do you know what's been on that stage?
Well, that I mean, and there's code and everything else that you're not supposed to be bare feet up there, but they do it all the time. They practice that way at home. It's that's how they think they can feel and whatever. And that doesn't bother me so much because they're behind the kit.
I
Um,
just don't like feet.
yeah, no, I get that. I just I try to provide as little distraction as possible. I want them focused on the lead singer and the show. So I don't do a video wall where I have a bunch of shit going on behind us. No, but if it's there, it's some effects that don't really distract your eye.
Yeah,
But the people are the show, not the video wall.
yeah,
And I do know some people who don't quite buy into that, but I've seen and I go and I watch these people, and I was in a tribute band where they had a video wall thing, and he's got all kinds of sports stuff going on, stuff trying to relate to the words of the song that really have nothing to do with the song, but the song is called Missed Again by Genesis, and he's got football kickers missing field goals. Well, now everybody's watching that, and they're going, "What the hell?" And they're not paying any attention to the show. And
I
I'm
learned that
watching.
right there.
Yeah, right. I'm watching this stuff. And when I go out and see other bands doing this or whatever, I pay attention. When I go out to watch bands, I'm watching everything. I'm watching what they do. I'm checking out their stage. I'm watching the audience, how the audience reacts. I take notes on everything. Um, and it's just in general not a good idea to have people distracted from your show. They're paying to
True.
see you, not a video. So
Yeah.
um, now, if you're a shitty band, you may need video so people don't know how shitty you are. But if you're asking for money, if you're expecting that you're going to make thousands of dollars a show, if you're pulling that card out, then you better be worth thousands of dollars a show,
Yeah, I agree with that right
right?
there.
And most people are not. They're not worth $500 a show, and that's just being bluntly honest. If you can't sell enough tickets, you're not worth the money. And if you don't put on a show, you're not worth the money.
Yeah,
So you gotta think about it. That venue is trying to run a business just like you are. And if they're not making money on you, then they shouldn't be paying you,
that's right. I mean,
right?
you got
So
to
I
get
mean,
people drunk.
right? Your job is to sell alcohol if you're doing club dates, right?
Yep.
So if you're not doing that, then you're failing miserably. Um, and people, that's other stuff that they got to learn. They got to learn how to manipulate that system and get people to buy alcohol and do things like come up with a drink, a special drink that night that's just for you, right? And
Sure.
and and offer that as a special and get them to buy shots for the band. And if you don't drink, make up a fake drink and just say, hey, we all drink such and such a drink, and then the bartender already knows this, and they're putting non-alcoholic drinks in your hands,
There
but
you
they're
go.
still selling drinks, right? And things like that, so that they're making money. And not only that, but that's a great way to interact with your audience and make them feel like they're a
Absolutely.
part of the show. So, there's all kinds of tricks and things that people can learn and do. And um,
It
there's
just
just
takes a little bit of ingenuity,
a little ingenuity. And again, go out and watch the successful bands that are selling hundreds to thousands of tickets and see what they do
Yeah.
and learn from that.
Observe.
Right. And you don't have to copy them verbatim, but just learn from it and get some ideas. Um, in a town like Nashville, especially a town like Nashville, where it's hard to sell 10 tickets, let alone, 500. There's a couple bands out here that do very, very well for themselves. But they have a show, they have a shtick. It's all well rehearsed. They've got one of them does do a lot of video stuff. They do a bunch of mashups and medleys and all that kind of stuff. And another one is kind of like a 70s Steel Panther. But they sell, 300 to 500 tickets on average for the smaller one, and upwards of 6 to 1,000 for the other one. And those are good nights, and those bars make a shit ton of money. That's why they're playing all the time,
Yeah.
because they make a shit ton of money because people want that experience. Um, Sorry about that. I
No,
forgot to
you're
shut
fine.
my phone off. So I mean, everything out there that people need to learn is free. and they just got to take the time and quit binge watching your favorite shows on Netflix and spend some time learning your craft.
Yeah,
Y-
I agree. I mean,
Right,
you'd be amazed how much time that you have if you cut out all your distractions.
right.
I understand you work a job, you want to come home and relax, but then again, if you want something, you'll make it happen. You won't make excuses. If you make excuses and you really don't want that at the
I
beginning.
mean, if you love it, all that stuff doesn't feel like work. It feels like you're being productive. And the more
True.
productive you feel, the more you want to be productive anyway. It's a
Right.
great feeling. So that's when I can always tell if people really love what they're doing or if they're just blowing smoke up my ass. Because if they love what they're doing, none of this is work. It's all fun.
Yeah.
I love doing what I do. The only thing I hate doing is working for people who make my job harder. And then that burns me out. If you make my job harder, I'm going to get pissed. So,
Understood.
um, but the grind of it, I love it. I love sitting around for hours booking. I love sitting here learning a million songs. I love, doing the marketing and setting up interviews and doing all that crap. I mean, that none of that stuff bothers me. But I love business in general. I like making shit happen, right? That
Yeah.
to me, being successful and whatever measurement you do that at, that for me is fun. I like being the get it done guy. Does that make
You got
sense?
any success stories?
I don't know. It depends on what you mean. Success in
Well,
music,
just
success in general.
success meaning like, I mean, anybody that you may have managed or
Well, I mean, I
any.
managed, the biggest artist I probably managed was Brother Kane, who had
Okay.
six top 10 hits in the 90s. I managed them and their lead singer, Damon Johnson, who also played in Alice Cooper, Thin Lizzy, Black Star Riders, and now he's with Lynyrd Skynyrd. Um, I managed Sass Jordan out of Canada, who's a Juno Award winning artist, and was on Canadian Idol for many years as a judge. I almost managed the Guess Who from the 60s and 70s. Um, I've worked with Nelson, Firehouse, God, who else? A lot of those 80s bands I've done stuff for. Um, yeah, I mean, there's some success there, but again, it's a lot of those things were people who were already successful and they're trying
Yeah.
to rebuild their career. And so they come to
Sure.
me because whoever they're with now isn't doing what they need to do or isn't getting it done enough, right? Or maybe there's too many horses in the stable that they got to pay attention to. And so they're looking for somebody who's young and hungry that's going to get out there and make some shit happen, right? And that's almost how all of it came. And it came through my radio show at the time called Live from Music City that was about how to make it in the music business. And so I'd have all these famous people on or record executives or whatever they would, managers, they'd come on and we talk about how you do it. And I would talk to these people before and after the show. And by the time, that show was over and we had a little discussion, like, man, you really know what you're talking about. You know what you're doing. Are you looking to manage anybody? That was how I did it. So, that was my way of having coffee with somebody without being obtrusive,
Yeah.
right?
That's cool, man. Have you
Um,
taken anybody from zero to hero?
no, no, because I always get the people that are already famous.
Gotcha.
Whenever I've tried to do zero to hero, it's we don't have enough money, and I'm not talking like 25 grand to get a spot somewhere. I'm talking like $15 for gas.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to get from zero to hero with people who can't afford to get to their next gig. Um, So no, no zero to heroes. It's just already established people that have already had massive success at one point in their career. Um, and to be honest with you, zero to hero never interested me that much because as soon as you get them to a certain level where they're getting that kind of attention, some other major player is going to come in and snap them away anyway, and then you just get left behind in the dust. So that
Gotcha.
never really appeared to me. It was something I really wanted to do. I've seen that happen so many times. Um, well, hell, I mean, Guns N' Roses just, had that pop up on recently in one of those documentaries where their original manager came out and said, "This is what happened to me."
Oh,
And
wow.
she spent years before Appetite took off for them, even through Appetite. And as soon as Appetite became huge, then all of a sudden the big guys came in and stole them, and she was left with nothing. They didn't thank her. They didn't do nothing, even though she's the one that got him to that point.
Right.
Um, so that just never appeals to me. I have found that I work much better for myself because I want it bad enough to make it happen.
Sure.
And when you're managing other people, if they don't want it, then there's nothing you can do to force them to do the work,
No, you're right.
right?
There seems to be a constant theme in this episode here that I'm doing, like people not fulfilling their end.
Right. I mean, and that's again, you have to want it, right? The most important part of being a musician is drive. And if you don't have the drive, you're not going to make it. And I don't care what kind of musician you're trying to be. I don't care
True.
if you're the songwriter, blah blah blah, or if you're just the lead guitar player. If you don't have the drive to be professional and consistent and badass at what you do, then you're not going to make it.
That's right.
So that's the most important thing. When people say, "Well, what does it take to be successful?" Drive, not
Drive.
talent. Drive.
Yeah. I mean,
Nirvana didn't
talent
have a whole
comes
lot of
with
talent,
drive.
right? So it's that's the defining key, and that's if I ever did work with somebody, that's the first thing I look at, and if I don't see it, then I don't even bother.
Right.
I don't even want to help them because I know I'm wasting my time,
Yeah.
and I don't mean that to be mean, but I don't have a lot of time, so if I'm going to
No.
take the time, I want to give that time to somebody who's really out there trying to bust it for themselves.
I mean, I don't see anything that you're saying here being negative at all. I mean, you've been burned. I mean, you've had people that you've tried working for. They either A, didn't fulfill their side of it and it burnt. That stuff sucks. I mean, you wasted your time
Right,
trying to help somebody and they didn't appreciate your time to do what they were supposed to do to get it done.
right, and I
Or
mean.
at least communicate, that they didn't want to do it that way. Maybe they could have done it a different way.
And I'll say, I mean, there isn't had anybody I've ever worked with that was an asshole. They were all really good people, but it's still a business thing where they just think it's okay to screw somebody, and they get away
Yeah.
with it, and it's kind of a manipulation thing. Um, it's just not where I want to be. I've got bills to pay too. I
Yeah.
can't afford to work for free, so um, I just don't like blowing smoke up people's asses. I want to be straight up honest about it, and You know, um, everybody's looking for somebody to step into their life and take them from zero to hero. And the only person who can really do that is you,
I agree.
right? So sometimes you might run into somebody that's rich and they want to help you and they can make things happen for you at a much faster pace. But the reality is if you don't have the drive to make, they're going to drop you in a hot. This happened just 2 years ago. I got hired for a band to play guitar with this guy, this young and up and coming kid who had a lot of songwriting talent, and he had $1 million backers behind him, and they were already hadn't done anything yet, um, just recording his first album, and there was already talk about opening up for Taylor Swift because of the connections he had. And we were talking one day, and I said, the one thing that you don't want to do at this stage is get involved with somebody because they're going to distract you and take you out of the rhythm, and next thing you know, you're going to fall in love, get married, and it's over. Swear to God, not 3 months later, he met a girl, fell in love, and it was over.
Yeah. It's a trance they fall into. Don't do it.
Right, right. And so that would be the other thing I'd say is, don't fall in love. Don't get in a relationship if you're at that stage and you're really trying to make it happen. Because unless you have somebody who is truly, truly in it for you and is willing to make the sacrifices
Yeah.
along with you, so that they're not pulling you away from what you need to do, you either you're going to have a really bad relationship and have a lot of songs to write, or they're going to pull you out of what's going on and you're going to lose every opportunity.
Yeah, I've seen more bands fail due to relationship issues than anything. It's just,
Right. Oh.
luckily, my wife, she's a independent woman. She could stand on her own 2 feet. I never
Right.
had to worry about it. So I was very lucky, but not everybody has that. I've had others in the past that was not wives with girlfriends that were like slamming doors if I spent 5 minutes trying to tune my guitar.
Right. So the you asked earlier about you said the five things on stage, but this is probably maybe the most important thing from the internal standpoint of a band is your spouse or significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend is not part of the band.
I agree.
They have nothing to say
Nothing.
ever. Mm-mm. Nope, they don't have anything to say. And whatever happens with the band stays with the band, and whatever discussions you have with your significant other stays with that, and it doesn't get brought into the band. It doesn't matter what they think. They don't know what they're talking about. And unless they've ever been the musician who's made it happen or the manager that's made it happen, everything else doesn't matter. So all it does is cause internal strife and starts putting up walls and boundaries and everything else. You keep personal relationships out of the band, period,
Yeah.
at all costs.
Yeah. And, you know,
So
and another thing too, relationship wise, and this is not just like love relationships too, but I had to learn too, if you wanted a successful band, you didn't rely on your friends.
right,
Get people that's outside of your friend circle that know how to do the job.
right.
And
For the
I'll
most part,
tell a
yeah,
quick
absolutely.
story. I'll tell a quick story. I had at the time, I thought it was a best friend, but I knew his personality where, I was needing a bass player, but I didn't want him involved in the band because I knew if there was just a little BS that happened,
Hmm.
then guess what?
Hmm.
He was done. And I
Right,
didn't have time to put all that time and effort into it, writing with somebody just to have him leave because he couldn't handle just a little bit of, BS.
right.
So, uh, and then too, on top of that, if you've worked with somebody before and they're good, that's one thing. But if you worked with somebody and hey, they're going to show up half the time,
Right,
not hired,
right.
not even doing it.
That story came up yesterday with the meeting I had with that guy. His best friend moved down here 6 months before him, was a really good drummer, and they were doing this one gig together, and all of a sudden the drummer kept showing up unprepared and lost the gig, and the drummer's all pissed because he lost the gig because he didn't think it was that big a deal, blah 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 blah. And he's mad at his friend who's still doing the gig, and friend didn't do anything wrong. Um, I mean, business is business, and more often than not, you want to keep friendships out of it or whatever, but you end up joining bands with your friends a lot of time.
True.
And you have to be able to separate and realize that there's business and then there's friendship. And I always tell this with my friends that are in my bands because even if you didn't start out as friends, you become friends when you work together a lot.
Yeah.
There's business Dave, there's manager Dave, and there's friendship Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When it comes to anything to do with the band, this is the hat I wear. And if you don't like it, that has nothing to do with this over here because you
Agreed.
have, right? This is what has to be done no matter who we are.
Yes.
This is something completely outside and separate of that particular project. And if you can't separate that, then you don't need to be in that band
Agreed.
because things are going to be done and said that are going to hurt feelings because either something didn't go their way or their idea didn't get picked or they showed up unprepared and now they're getting bitched at or whatever the case is going to be. And then resentment starts to build up. But you have to understand that somebody's got to run the band and that person's going to have some negative things to say now and then. And you just have to be able to deal with that. There's something to be said for how you say it, but eventually, like I had a blow up with my band this last summer, and I honestly didn't mean it to go that way, but I got really pissed after a show because it just felt like all this time people are not listening to me, they're disrespecting me, blah 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 blah, and I just let them have it, and a lot of people got pissed off. I said, no, 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 you don't get to get pissed off at me because I've been asking this for months and months and months, and you still aren't doing it. I get to be pissed off at you because you're not fulfilling your end. And I've asked and I've asked. I've been the nice guy. I've done it the right way. Still didn't get done. So, well, this isn't the time or the place. Well, it was never the time or the place because it didn't work anywhere. It
Right.
didn't work at rehearsal. It didn't work after rehearsal. It didn't work on text messages or on the phone. Right. And so eventually somebody's going to get pissed off and yell. And, but you have to be able to separate that. Right.
Sure.
And, but people are not very good at that. And so it can really damage some friendships, and you have to be aware of that going into these things. And the other thing is when you do have friendships in there, if you get kicked out, if you bail, just because somebody else is your friend or maybe you join together doesn't mean that they need to bail either,
Right.
right? That still might be a good gig for them. Why should they lose their opportunity just because you lost yours,
Right.
right? And so to have that kind of expectation is very unfair. Um, but yeah, I mean, you'll see that kind of stuff now and then. So, you know, just be very aware of your relationships and have some kind of ground rules and every now and then go over those rules because it keeps everybody kind of on the same page. And, people can better deal with those kinds of disappointments without trashing everything that they hold
Yeah.
dear. So,
And I
um,
think really the main thing too, people need to learn to communicate. Not only communicate, but active listening,
right.
which you brought up earlier.
Right. I mean, active listening as a band for your parts, and active listening as to what's going on within the band.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, it's like if I have a member of the band who cannot be prepared because of whatever thing's going on in their life, just tell me,
Yeah.
because I will get a substitute for that gig who will be able to get the job done, and the band won't suck, and then you can come right back when you're got your shit worked out.
Yeah.
Because I don't get rid of people if they're responsible.
Sure.
I had a bass player in my band for a long time, and he was a national touring bass player. And I said, look, if you ever get a national touring gig, take it. Your gig will always be here when you come back. I'll just find a sub because there's a million subs in this town. And I said, you don't have to worry about giving up your gig when you're back in town needing to make money. Just let me know and give me enough notice if you can. And that was all, I'm not going to fire somebody just because they got another gig and they're going to be on the road for a few months or whatever. No, we'll just find a sub.
Kind of a
It's
dick thing to
easy.
do.
Yeah, I mean it's easy to do, especially in a town like this. But if you don't let me know and you keep showing up unprepared or whatever the case is going to be, that's when I get pissed, and that's when I tend to replace people.
Yeah.
So, but nobody wants to do that. I don't care how much of a hard ass you are. I can easily do it. Like I don't have a problem saying nope, you're not welcome here anymore. But I don't like it and I don't feel good about it, and it will bother me for weeks to months after because
Yeah.
it's nobody likes disappointing or hurting anybody. But I have the ability and I know the importance of being able to do it, so I
Yeah.
will do it. I just don't like it. Um,
Yeah. For me, it's the worst feeling ever trying to fire a band member because, I mean, being in a band is just like you said, it's kind of like being in a relationship,
mhm,
it's almost like a
yeah,
marriage because you're depending on one another to do
right.
things. But
Well, and
if
that's the
things
key.
get
If you
to that
don't
point,
if you don't if you don't realize that other people are depending on you, you have not been paying attention. This
true.
right? A band is not a place for you to be if you don't realize that other people are expecting you to do your job. So that's one of the things that makes me keep going is I realize that I told all these people this is our goals, this is what we're going to do, and I'm going to try to get you to the point where you don't need a day job. That's what keep because I said I'm going to do that, right? So if I don't do that, then I'm letting them down.
Yeah.
Right? If they don't see me constantly improving and making things better, getting more gigs, getting higher paid gigs, whatever, then I'm letting them down. And that's my responsibility as the guy that runs the band. Not just to
Yeah.
make excuses about, oh, well, people don't like this kind of music or we're just not getting anything. Well, I've only sent off 15 emails in the last 2 months, right? I have a schedule that I keep, kind of, for lack of a better way to put it. I have a goal of how many emails or how many phone calls or whatever I'm going to make, and I do that until I'm done. And when I'm done, then I can
Right.
take time off. And until I'm done, I can't take time off. No TV, no fucking around, no none of that. Right? You just do it until you get it done, and then you go take your time off that you need for yourself. And the next day you get up and you work whatever your schedule is for that day, however many hours you need to spend on the phone, and how many emails you said you're going to send out, and whatever. Because it takes thousands of emails to get a halfway full calendar.
Hmm.
People don't realize that.
It takes 1,000 no's to get a yes as well,
Right. It's a numbers game. And people are like, oh, I worked so hard and I busted my ass. And I go and I ask them, well, how many emails did you send last year? Well, about 100. Dude, that's a day for me.
Hmm.
That's not busting your ass. That's a day's worth of emails. And then once you've built up your database, that's about 10 seconds of your day because you
Sure.
just create your email and click the places you want it to go and it sends it right to them. So that's not busting your ass. Busting your ass is doing all the shit that goes along with it. Busting your ass is doing all your video editing, all your Photoshop, all your press releases, all your blah, 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 blah. All the interviews you're scheduling for whatever town you're going to.
Hmm.
All the stuffs, right? All the stuff that has to be done for everything that's coming up. And that's busting your ass when you're getting all of it done, not just getting one thing done, right? 100 emails is nothing.
I agree.
Nothing. So I think that's the other thing people don't realize is the amount of work that it does take, and why it's so disrespectful to the people that do run the band to make everything happen. For the people who show up unprepared with excuses about, well, I was just busy. Busy doing what? Because I saw you on Facebook,
Yeah.
right? I saw you out partying with your friend at the club the other night. How busy
Hmm.
were you?
I will admit, I have been at the end of that finger pointing.
Right.
I have been.
I don't think anybody hasn't been.
Yeah.
But that's when you have to be real with yourself and have that come to Jesus talk and decide, okay,
Yeah.
right, this person's over here putting this all this stuff that we don't have to deal with into this band. The least we can do is know our shit and show up prepared and on time,
Yeah.
right? That's a few hours a week compared to them working 8 or 10 hours a day. It's a whole different level of commitment. So, um, I think that people need to realize that, being successful in the music business means that there's a bunch of different hats you have to wear, and somebody's got to get it all done. And if you do choose to hand that off and it doesn't get done, you have to take it back upon yourself and get it done yourself. And so that hat usually ends up coming back to you when you hand it off. And learning how to do all these different skill sets, learning how to use Photoshop, learning how to use whatever video program you use, learning how to do PR, learning how to do marketing in general, learning how to do interviews, learning how to do whatever it is that you got to do, talking in public, whatever. All those things have to be learned and mastered to some level.
Hmm.
And then, somehow you have to not only learn it, but then you have to execute it, right? So, but again, it's all out there for free. There's
It is.
nothing in this business that you can't learn for free. Nothing. So,
And that's
uh,
one thing. That's one reason why I have this platform, is to kind of help people learn about the music industry. That's why I bring people such as yourself that's been there. And again, I appreciate your time 100% for this. Thank you
Jesus,
so much for your time here.
my pleasure. I can't. That was almost 2 hours, man.
Yeah, it felt
I
like
talk too much.
it went by just like that.
Talk way too much. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Man, there's a lot of treasure in this conversation. A lot of treasure. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And maybe we can have you back on sometime.
My pleasure. Anytime.
All right, sir. I like wrapping it up with advice, but I believe that you've really covered a heck of a lot of advice
Yeah,
for
I don't know
people.
what else
But
I
is
could
there
put out
anything
there
that
right now
stands
that I
out?
haven't already said, right? Just know what you want more than anything else. And when you know what you want, you'll find it much easier to set the path that it takes to get there. When you don't
Love it.
know what you want, everything is overwhelming, and then you
Yeah,
get nothing done. So break it down. Know what you want. Break it down a little bit at a time, and the more you do, the more productive you will be.
good deal.
Yeah.
Now, anything that you're doing right now that you want people to know about? Any shows going on with your band? Is there
Um,
anything that you want to be contacted for?
I have my two tributes. I have Heartbreaker America's premier Pat Benatar experience, heartbreakertributeband.com. We have a show in Knoxville March 1st at the Open Chord, and we have a show March 8th here in Nashville at the Station Theater in Smyrna. And then we have the Women of Rock tribute, which is, like I said before, it's everything from Heart and Pat Benatar all the way up to Evanescence, Hailstorm, The Pretty Reckless. What was that other band? Sing Maria Brink in this moment. Yeah, we do stuff like that. We got a show March 8th at the Station Theater here in Smyrna, and we'll have another. I have a bunch I can't announce yet. They're to be announced. But that's womenofrocknashville.com. And people can contact me in general, just about anything. Just be respectful of my time.
Sure.
I'm not looking to manage anybody, and I'm not looking to book your band. But if you have questions, feel free to contact me, and if I have time, I'll get back to you.
Cool.
Find me on
They can
Facebook,
find you on
David
where?
Lowry, the Lowry Agency. Yeah,
All right.
thelowryagency.com. Easiest way.
Great. Yeah, and I'll have that down below if anybody wants to reach out to you.
Awesome.
Cool, man.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Wow. I don't even know where to begin. That entire interview was a clinic in itself. There were several things that we discussed that are well worth noting here. The first thing being why he stopped working with local musicians in the first place, and what he looks for before adding people onto social media, and just really the common theme of the whole interview, which was being responsible and following through. After the interview, we stayed on the call for roughly another 2 hours, and I was just absorbing as much as I could from him because he was just such a wealth of knowledge. Also, I enjoy talking to people that are much smarter than me in fields where I'm not as savvy. I will admit, I'm just now learning the true business side of things, and I still have a lot to learn. Being a musician, it kind of took away that time that I was really meaning to spend on learning the business side of things. I was more interested in my craft and learning how to solo better, how to learn to write songs better. I was not really in the business side of things because honestly that kind of stuff put me to sleep back in the day. Now I've gotten a little bit out of the music scene, I'm more interested in the business side of things and I'm learning an awful lot. You're never too old to learn. If you stayed and listened to this entire interview, thank you so very much. You are a true knowledge seeker, and I sincerely hope that you picked up some knowledge along the way. Was there anything that stood out to you on what we discussed that I didn't mention above? Message me down in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you gained any value from this video, please like and subscribe. With your support, we can finally figure out how to make an EPK that doesn't look like a middle school PowerPoint. And if you want to see a preview of our next musical guest, check it out.